All right, so our next speaker is named Brett Corbin. Brett entered the world of wealth management in 2014 after 10 years of working as a financial news editor and reporter for publications in the Midwest, Paris, and the New York Times. This background has helped him better understand complex financial instruments and strategies in which he can then make relatable to his clients. He then joined his father, Alan Corbin, in 2014, and then spent 10 years learning the business firsthand. After his father's retirement, Brett joined Bird in 2024 and continued to honor his father's legacy and client-first approach by focusing on helping individuals and families build wealth so that they can accomplish their goals and achieve financial independence. He specializes in financial planning, wealth management, solutions for business owners, retirement plans, 401ks, SEP IRAs, and cash balance plans. Let's give a warm wisdom and wealth welcome. Let's put those hands together and give a warm wisdom and wealth welcome to Brett Corbin. Brett Corbin, the floor is yours today.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for that introduction. Yes, I'm Brett Corbin, Louisville native here, and work with people of all kinds and all levels and all beginnings and endings and everything like that. So just happy to be here. We're going to go through some documents that I use to kind of help people focus their minds and kind of look even decades out ahead to, you know, if they want to retire when they're 60, then we can start today and make that happen. So yeah, basically I'll start with everybody's favorite, and that is a budget. So basically you need a budget to see how much money you can save. So it's not the most fun experience, but let me share my screen here real quick, a little rusty. Let's see here. So yeah, here we go. All right. This is what a budget looks like, a budget sheet. It's not completed, of course. I can send all this out afterwards. So basically, you've got your wages and bonuses, any self-employment stuff, rentals. If you've got any rentals, this is the place to put them in there. And then we've got expenses. So money's coming in, what's going out. You've got housing, groceries, entertainment, stuff like that. Got to always think about taxes. That's one thing that my clients all have in common usually is, especially the big ones, they are obsessed with saving taxes and they don't want to pay Uncle Sam any more than they can, or they have to. So always think about taxes when you're investing and think, you know, what's going to happen here and where can I save taxes? And then you've got travel and, you know, you don't need to be a monk and not have any fun. So you can put that in there too. And then there's the breakdown, total income, total outcome right there. So that's the first thing you got to kind of think about, because then you can figure out how much you have to invest. All right, let's go with the next slide here. We've got, let's see, this is a good one because this shows how wealth builds over time. So let me get this one up. This is a very important sheet to share with anybody who's young, because you can see the difference in the time you wait. So how to build wealth. It's compounding returns. So that's the name of the game right here. So you can see here, age 25, they're putting in $115 a week or $6,000 a year. Most people can swing that. I know it sounds like a lot, but if you can do 50 a week, that's even good. So here's 25 to 65. That's 240,000 they're going to put in during those 40 years. At 10%, you'll have $2.6 million. If you get 12%, you'll have 4.6. And if you wait till 70, look at that. In just 5 years at 12%, 4.6 turns into 8.1. So that's why people talk about waiting to claim Social Security, because Social Security goes up 8% every year. So you definitely want to wait until you pretty much have to take Social Security. I know most people don't, but anyway. So let's look at age 35 to 65 here. After 30 years, you'll have just under $1 million at 10% a year compounding. Now people say, where'd you get these percentages? The market usually does about 6 to 8, but we've had some really good years. The 2024 and 2023, each were both up 20%, the overall market. When I'm talking about the overall market, I'm talking about probably the S&P 500 is the most followed one. And then you've got the Dow Jones, that's just 30 companies. So 500, you're a lot more diversified. And so we'll talk a little bit more about diversification later. Here's 45 to 65. That's just 20 years. They've only put in 120,000. So, right, half of what the 25-year-old put in. And at 10%, they're at $340,000. And if they got 12%, 432. Now, when you get to retirement, there's something called the rule of 4%. And that means that you can only take out 4% of your nest egg that you saved up over time. So if you saved up 100 grand, you can only take out 4%, or else you're going to start to deplete the nest egg that you built, right? So you've got to have a pretty big nest egg if you're only taking 4% out. That's why $1 million is kind of a good goal to have when you retire. And I know that sounds crazy, but if you start early enough, it'll happen. And then the 55-year-old, they waited way too late, and in just 5 years, they're going to put in 60 grand, and it's only going to be $95,000 right there at 105. So that's something to show young people when they get their first job or things like that. Start contributing to your 401k immediately. There's usually free money involved with 401ks because companies will match. If you put in 5%, they'll put in 5%. So definitely do that. Never pass up a 401k. It's not going to be that much out of your paycheck, and it's going to grow over time. Plus, you've got the free money. So, and if anybody has any questions, let me know. We'll take questions at the end, but if anything kind of pops out, just feel free to interrupt. I'm good with that. All right, let's look at something else. Diversification. Everybody wants to kind of find the hot stock and try and hit the lottery, and we're just trying to hit singles and doubles here. We're just trying to get nice, steady growth. We don't want anything crazy. So this very colorful chart here, this shows all the different options you have in the market when you go to invest. These are all the different types of things. You'll see these in 401ks usually. They might not have commodities in there, but they're probably going to have an international one. They'll have a large cap value. They'll have small to mid cap. And so if we look at this chart, it starts out top left, 2004. International, let's just pick that. It's doing really well. It's up 20%. Then 2005, it's up 13. 2006, it's up 26. We're geniuses. Then it's up 11. Here comes 2008. We're down 43%. That's going to wipe out a lot of it. Then down here in 2011, we're down 12%, 17, blah, blah, blah. So let's move over to the far side of the chart. Over here, if I can move this. On the far right, this chart ends with 2003. Here's how everything did. Going top to bottom, large cap growth, that was the number one. That's 11.29%. So remember that 12%? We're darn close right there. Small cap, you've got 9%. But this diversified portfolio, it did 7%, pretty much, 6.5%, let's call it. That's not bad. If we would have thrown in 2024, it would have been probably around 8, 9%. So basically, you can see this diversified portfolio on the chart. It just kind of goes right down the middle. And just like walking up and down hills in real life is exhausting, it's exhausting here too. You're probably going to think you're doing something wrong. And if you pick just one of these, right? And it's going to be pretty wild. So that's why we like to just stay the course, stay nice and balanced, not panic ever. If you've got long enough, a buying dip like the Trump trade stuff, that back in April, that was a great buying opportunity. So for our clients, we bought a lot of Amazon, actually. It was down quite a bit, and now they're up 20% thanks to the market comeback. And by the way, that's my only spiel for things. I'm not going to pitch an annuity or do anything like that. This is just all educational. But I thought that was a good example for kind of how sometimes you got to step in and have some courage. All right. So then what's all this for? So the name of the game is planning and long-term planning. So here's a questionnaire we use to develop financial plans, which I'll show you a sample of here in a little bit. So there's the question. When do you want to retire? Most people say tomorrow. And yes, you can retire tomorrow if you want to live in a fish shack down by the river and not do anything fun. So basically, you got to think about, when do I want to retire? How much do you need each month? So you can kind of break it up so it's an easier kind of number to figure. And then Social Security can come in usually when you're about 66, 67. And usually that amount is about $2,200. Can get up to 3,000. It just depends on how much you worked and how much money you put into the system. Some people ask, will Social Security be around when I retire? We have experts in Washington who kind of study all this type of stuff, and basically they think it's going to be around. I mean, we've all paid into it. Me personally, I think what they might do is kind of say to, I don't know, 18-year-olds in 2030, they might say, hey, you're on your own. You're not going to pay into it, but it's not going to be there. I think that is kind of maybe realistic, but they can't really take away the money we put in. So that's kind of a funny idea, I think, in my opinion. Anyway, then we go, what costs will end in the decades ahead. So your mortgage or your rent is usually a big expense. So it's good to have your house paid off before you retire, because then that money's not going out the door. Will you work part-time and have any other income streams once you stop working full-time? What will you do in retirement? You don't want to just go sit on the beach. As nice as that is, it's going to be pretty unhealthy after a while. So we like for people to at least have something to get them out of bed. How much will you get in Social Security? Did that. And then how much are in your retirement plans? Do you have any other stuff? Long-term care, something to think about. And then always have a will. There's a lot of cheap ways to get a will done these days. So please do that. Maybe even set up a trust. There's a website called Trust and Wills. It's about $250, I think, but it's a good investment for your family, because if you have a trust, then you stay out of probate. And probate involves courts and judges and long delays and things like that. So if you have a trust, you can just have it all transferred right at that moment when you go meet our maker, and then you'll be good and your family will be good. So that's something else I would recommend. All right, now let's look at a financial plan here. Here's the sample one. Here is what we do for our clients. We start with planning. We don't start with the investing. We start with this kind of a financial goal plan. This is for John and Jane Doe. You can see here, it's going to go through a whole bunch of stuff. I got to move it down real quick. So here's all their expenses. You can see some of the numbers they plugged in. They've talked about Medicare, stuff like that. Here's their net worth right there. So they have 1.6 million investable assets. They have 800,000 there in other assets. So you can factor that in. And then total liabilities, they don't have much debt there. Well, in this picture, they don't have much debt. So 25,000 in debt. So their net worth is 2.37. You do have to live somewhere. A lot of people are like, well, I could sell the house. And it's like, well, where are you going to live besides the house? So the house is a nice asset to have. And maybe you can downside and use some of that 800,000, but you do have to live somewhere. So that's not a cost that's going to go away probably. Here's all their accounts. I'll talk about Roth IRAs and IRAs next. Okay, and then talk about their risk score, things like that. And then here's the results. So this kind of shoots out almost a speedometer looking thing. And you can see here, in this current scenario, they're at 80%. And then we go into something called the play zone in this software, so we can move around. Okay, well, what if I retire a year early? What's it do to the result? Or what if I work later? So basically, that's what they did here. They made some changes to get to that 90% or 93% success rating. And that refers to, darkly enough, will you die with enough money, or will you run out of money before you die? So again, you just got to kind of grin and bear it and look at the reality. So that's what we do for our clients. Okay. So then I'll just talk a little bit about the different types of accounts. So we already talked about 401ks. Definitely always do the 401k at your job. If you want a second opinion on that, just shoot me over your options and I'll look things over and we'll see what looks best. And then you've got what you can do on your own, you can do Roth IRAs or you can do traditional IRAs. The difference between the two is that with a Roth, the best way to think about it is the money's coming out of your bank account, going into the Roth, then you don't have to pay taxes on it ever. If it gains 20% over that time, or if it gains 100%, let's say, that all comes out tax-free. So that's why Roths are really good for young people because they have more time than an older person to let that compounding interest grow, right? Where with an IRA, you pay taxes on the back end and you get a tax break on the front end. And that's another good part about a 401k is that let's say business owner Joe makes $100,000 and he puts 15,000 into his 401k, he only has to pay $85,000 in taxes that year. So that's why rich people really love 401ks, and that's why they max them out all the way that they can go. So then other types of accounts. So business owners can do something called a SEP IRA, and that's a single employee pension plan IRA. And you can put a whole lot more money into that than you can a standard IRA. So that's something to think about if you're a business owner, if you've got an LLC, or if you're a 1099, you can also do a SEP IRA. So that's something good as well to kind of think about. And then you've got 401ks, you've got all sorts of other different retirement accounts, but those are the most frequent ones, I guess I would say. All right, let's get into investing, right? Everybody loves that type of thing. So how do we invest money? We use something called stock reports. So it basically shows us, it grades stocks on a 1 to 10 scale, and then it gives us a number. And it might not always be right, but at least it kind of helps us not get into bad stocks, essentially. So here's the one for Amazon, like I mentioned earlier. You can see it's got a score of 8. Let's see how the returns are. So on a 1-year basis, it did 17%. On a 5-year basis, it did right at 67% there. You can see it kind of talks about the price momentum is a 10. You can see there. Fundamentals are good. Earnings are good. It's not too risky. If it's down here, then it's risky. If it's a 10, then it's very safe, according to this AI software. Then we can see some of its rivals. You've got Etsy there, W, things like that. So that's kind of what we look at, and that's how we evaluate stocks. We don't necessarily encourage individual stock investing, but if it's a name like Amazon, then it's probably going to be all right. And then here's the one for, let's see what this is for. Guess I showed, okay. I thought I had a different one here. I think I have Microsoft. Hold on a second. Oh yeah, here it is. I think. No, it's still Amazon. Sorry, bear with me. Okay. Well, let me pull up Amazon real quick while we're waiting. Any questions while I'm doing this?
Well, the questions will have to come towards the end after you finish.
Gotcha. Okay. Here's Microsoft. Okay, this is Microsoft. My bad. Okay, so here's Microsoft. It's an 8. You can see it's done 11.5 on 1 year, but it's done 149% over 5 years. And that's because it was coming out of COVID. And so it's had a real nice run after that. Microsoft owns LinkedIn. They've got all the software that, we use for Outlook and things like that. So there's a 10 rating on the risk. So that's super safe. And then the fundamentals are good and the earnings are good. So that's kind of a way that we look at that type of thing. And then I'll show you something called an ETF. It's exchange traded fund. And it is right here. Okay. So an ETF or a mutual fund is a basket of stocks. And basically, just like that diversification chart was talking about, this is diversified way to invest in core dividend companies or dividend growth. So a dividend is what a company pays their shareholders as a reward for being a shareholder. So some companies pay big dividends, tech companies usually don't, but a dividend is a sign of health. It's a sign that the company is doing well and making money, so much so that it can send money to its investors. So this is a good one if you're just getting started. This is a good one to kind of jot down. You could put money into this every month and it would do very well. Not guaranteed, of course, but it's got a great track record. You can see if you put $10,000 into this back in 2014, it would be over 30,000 now with some nice growth along the way. And the beauty of putting money in the market over time on a regular basis is that back in COVID, when we all thought the world was going to end, you're still buying. And so whatever you bought in 2020 in this big chart here, that's going to be a real nice return. Whereas that 10,000 maybe that you put in just to start, it's only going to get that growth. So that's why 401ks are good too, because you're buying on the 1st and the 15th pretty much. And so you're getting the market when it's high, you're getting the market when it's low. And that's a nice way to get compounding interest. And then you can see here's that performance. So over 10 years, it did right at that almost 12%, right? That was our target. For 5 years, it did 16. And since it started up, it's done right at 12%. So going back to 401ks real quick, just how much should you put in? I usually tell people 10%. It sounds like a lot, but you'll get used to it and your future self will definitely be happy that you did. So that's kind of, and then plus you get that 5% or so from the company. So now we're at 15%. So that's kind of a good way to think about how much you need to save. It's kind of a bill to your future self that you're kind of paying there. All right.